Hello and welcome to Call Things Sports. Today we will be chatting about Luka Doncic and whether or not we're even going to see him over the next couple weeks. And I guess since this is a Jazz podcast, we should probably talk about the Utah Jazz a little bit too. But Dale, thoughts on, to beat the dead horse, thoughts on Luka getting his tech rescinded so he was able to play in game 82? What's going on there?
I thought that was hilarious. I think the NBA made the right call because I thought that tech was ridiculous. So I think it's just an unfortunate happenstance that I believe that the NBA made the right call. I think the tech was wrong, and so I kind of wish they didn't take the effort to do it at this point. And this is me coming from a Mavs fan perspective, but this is kind of an interesting situation for me because the Mavs have been my team ever since I was 2. But the Jazz are I spend a lot more time following them at this point, so they're solidified in that number 2 spot. So I guess there's not really a way I can lose this series.
No, I mean, I think the funniest part is if no one had been in the league office Saturday morning, if no one had been working, if everyone had just had the day off, no one could have rescinded it. But because people were working weekends, it got rescinded, and now Luka is out for what could be a really long time. Calf strains obviously aren't a good thing. They can range from being out anywhere. I think kind of 7 to 10, 7 to 14 games was the range I was seeing. And obviously, every injury is different. Every person is different. Mavs haven't played in a week, so that's the equivalent of 3-4 games already. But I think I probably would have, somewhat of a homer pick, but I do think I would have probably picked the Jazz in 7 to start out with this series, just because I really do believe that Donovan and Rudy are going to be able to bring things together, and that the Jazz are healthy, that they've been able to practice for the first time in a while. I really think they can win it. But if Luka's gone for even one game and the Jazz are able to pick up a win, I think that does a really good job of swinging the series in the favor of Utah.
Yeah, I think if Luka's only out for one game, which at this point, it's not official that he's out for game 1, it's just almost definite. They said doubtful, I think is what they said.
Yeah.
For Luka, and then they haven't said anything about game 2, but the word is that they're kind of expecting him to be gone game 2. I think if Luka's out for just one game, I would still put the Mavericks as the favorite in this series. If he's out for 2, then it's the Jazz, it's their series to lose at that point. Which is kind of a weird situation. They need to go into Dallas and win both games in Dallas with Luka out, which it's definitely within the realm of possibility that the Mavs steal one from the Jazz when the Mavs are home without their star player, though, without Luka. And then if Luka comes back and if he can play close to 30 minutes, I'm imagining if he comes back, they're not even going to try to minutes restrict him. But if he feels comfortable playing around 30 minutes, that's a tough situation for the Jazz, but also a tough situation for the Mavs coming into Utah at that point, tied 1-1 or even down 2-0.
And I don't think the Mavericks have won in Utah the last 11 times they've been here. So, that definitely doesn't bode well for them. It doesn't bode well that even if Luka comes back, we saw it, Donovan Mitchell came back last year. He didn't miss a game in the Clippers series, but he was not himself. He was nowhere near himself, and that really hurt the Jazz. We saw Mike come back for the last game of the series for game 6. And again, he wasn't himself. Just because Luka's on the court, obviously you want him on the court at whatever percentage he can be at because he's a top 15 player in the world, and probably even higher than that. But that doesn't mean he's going to be able to produce at the level that will let the Mavericks win the series.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. The Mavs and Jazz series is kind of interesting. The Jazz won the first 2, the Mavs won the second 2. The Mavs have first half of the season, the Mavs arc for the season has been pretty similar to the Celtics, where both the Mavs and the Celtics started off rough, finished strong. The Jazz were kind of the opposite. They started off pretty strong, hit some injuries, and then they've not really been in rhythm since then. But what a great way to get into rhythm, where playoffs are tough. They're also really high energy, and you oftentimes see the best out of a lot of players in the playoffs. So the Jazz get into a high energy situation, some must win games, but also if the Jazz play to their potential, the first game in Dallas should be a layup, and probably the second one in Dallas because Luka will probably be out. So this is a really interesting situation because for the past week, 2 weeks, we've been talking about this, and the media, kind of national media, has been talking about how the Jazz are probably going to blow things up. But if they get rhythm in this first round, beat the Mavericks, move on to the second round in stride and rhythm, they're going against most likely a Phoenix Suns team.
Yeah.
But what if they push the Suns to 7? What if they beat the Suns? Like, all of that talk may just be thrown out the window at that point.
No, I entirely agree with you. And that's why I've seen so many YouTube videos like the last week or two, like, should the Jazz blow things up? And I'm like, I will maybe come back and watch this video if the Jazz, like, just have a terrible first round. But in my mind, there's no reason to talk about it because the playoffs are still coming. And, like, yes, the Jazz are incredibly lucky that Luka is hurt. Like, I'm not going to, I mean, if we're talking about this, when we're talking about the season in the future, that's going to be kind of an asterisk that we have to bring up. But it's just kind of like how I look at the 4 games they've played this year already, and I believe New Year, Christmas Day game, I don't think Luka played. So, and I think there were multiple COVID people out with COVID on the Mavs. So that game doesn't mean a lot to me. The last 2 games, the Jazz were deep into road trips playing in Dallas. So,
and I believe Gobert was out for one of them, if I remember correctly. So
yeah, Gobert
that kind of
was
negates that whole game.
Yeah. And then I can't remember if there was any weird stuff with the All-Star break game. And that was a really good game that came down to the wire. So, like, that's kind of the one game that, and I'm sure someone in the comments can let me know that even then there's a reason to look at that game and say, like, hey, this doesn't really show what the matchup's going to be like. But this is going to be a good series. It's definitely a series where, yes, the Mavericks can switch. They can go small. And if they're able to get Finney-Smith in the right corner shooting a lot of threes, like, that's not going to be good for Utah. That can definitely give some flashbacks to the Clippers series. But overall, the Jazz, I mean, have this series in their own hands. I do think right now I'm leaning towards a Jazz in 6 prediction, but, like, we've seen the Jazz blow big leads this year. We've seen the Jazz go and lose to Detroit. Like, I really hope that they're not in their head and thinking, oh, Luka's out, we're going to win this. They need to be professional, and they need to understand that the Mavericks have 14 other great players. Like, are they nearly as good as Luka? No, but they're still definitely still capable of playing winning basketball without Doncic.
Yeah, and, like, I think with right now with the information that we have about Doncic, and obviously that's the one thing that it's really tough to make a prediction on the series because he's a big question mark, and, like, it's possible that he plays game 1. They haven't ruled him out yet. The game is in, at the time that we're recording this, the game is in like 15 hours.
Yeah, 15 hours or so.
So, like, they haven't ruled him out yet. I'm guessing they will, but like, I think right now with the information that we have, my opinion is that if I were to set the odds, it would be kind of even.
Yeah.
And that's, and for those of you who don't know how, like, odds are set, they take into account home court advantage, and that gives you a boost automatically. And so, like, if you were to ignore that, then I guess I would say the Jazz slightly have the advantage with the information we have now. If Luka returns early, if he only misses 1 game, I would probably give the advantage to the Mavs at that point. Especially if the Mavs end up pulling an upset and winning this first game.
No, I think what we're going to see is that if we see Luka come back, I think there's a decent chance that he's going to re-aggravate his injury. I have a hard time believing that he will be able to come back at 100%. And whenever you have an injury and you come back, at 90%, you really run that risk of just hurting yourself again. And obviously, worst case scenario would be what happened to Kevin Durant, where Luka comes back, then all of a sudden it ends up being out for, a year. He would just missing a whole year and a whole playoff. That would be absolutely worst case scenario for Dallas. And so I'm sure they're going to be cautious there. But Luka is a competitor at heart, and he wants to be out there. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Now, I think like kind of really important questions to be asking on the Utah Jazz side is, are they going to what's going to have changed in this last week? One really interesting thing that I'm not sure if you've seen, Dale, is I believe that there's been some reporting that the Jazz were able to practice 3 or 4 days total since the
Wow.
All-Star break, going to the end of the playoff, going to the end of the regular season.
I thought you were saying in this last week. I was like, that's a
no,
lot of
no.
practice.
Like they practiced 3 or 4 times total in the last like 30 or so games of the season. So where they probably practiced that same number of times, or at least were going over film and had the opportunity to do a lot of game planning. Like I think that a lot of the concerns that we saw with the Jazz, once you realize they were never able to get in a gym and try to work through things and just trying to like fix things either in shoot around or in actual gameplay, that makes me feel a bit more confident as a Jazz fan that they're going to be able to get out there and have been able to flip some switches and kind of change how they're approaching things.
And that, like, the playoffs is where the coaches really matter. Like having that time you have up to 7 games to figure this team out. And Quinn Snyder, as much as he's had playoff disappointments, I think he's an asset come playoff time. He's been able to, especially if you look at his early playoff career, he was able to like get some wins where he probably shouldn't have gotten wins in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So this Mavericks team, they're kind of an interesting one to figure out. I don't think Jason Kidd is like, he's kind of a wild card. You saw him like as a player, he was one of the smartest players out there. He understood the game. He coached as a assistant coach to LeBron James, and I'm sure he picked up some stuff there. But that doesn't always translate to what you know about basketball. Doesn't always translate to can you get your team to understand that and make those changes on the court. So I think that's one thing that could be interesting that no one's really talking about is this might be a chess match between Jason Kidd and Quinn Snyder.
Yeah.
And Quinn Snyder kind of has the upper hand with the pieces. He still has his queen, and Jason Kidd lost his queen. So
yeah. And unless all of a sudden someone gets a pawn to one of the Dallas Mavs is a pawn at the other end of the board, which would shock me. Like I know they've got some great players.
Just go injure Gobert and
I wasn't even going that far. I was just saying, convert a pawn to a queen. Like if all of a sudden Dorian Finney-Smith just has his Jeremy Lin
we get Linsanity in the first round of the playoffs.
Insanity.
It works.
It works, it works. No, hopefully that won't happen. I do hope that Luka is healthy. I really don't want to see anything bad happen to him. Like he's such a fun player to watch, and we've talked a lot about that injury, and there's so much more to talk about other than that. But I feel like that is kind of the overarching theme. Like even if the Jazz get past this series, they're going to have to bring their A game against against most likely the Suns, like you said, in the second round. Which again, Dale, why are we even getting a round ahead? The last time we got a round ahead was against the Clippers when the Jazz were up 2-0. So we'll try to keep it here. But is there anything else that you want to talk about this series, Dale? Anything that really stands out to you, or more or less do you feel like the Jazz have the edge until Luka comes back, and that's kind of how things are going to end up looking?
I think here are like 2 interesting points. Well, maybe one. I'll drop the other. We talked enough about the injury. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. I think we'll just talk ourselves in circles. But one is, and like we know the Jazz will have the advantage the first game and probably the second, and it's looking like there's a good chance Luka will be out the third. So with this, we also know the Jazz have a tendency to get a big win or a big lead and then lose the lead. So if you're Quinn Snyder and you're looking at this and saying, I know some of my guys are injury prone. We've had some injury issues in the playoffs in the past. Obviously, you're going out there like as hard as you can the first quarter and the second quarter, trying to build a big lead. But then when you come to it, are you trying to let's see if I can get my guys some rest, hoping that you can hold on to the lead, or do you go hard all the way to the end when you have this advantage and there's less of a chance that you drop the lead? Do you try to secure that win, or do you try to get you guys some rest to avoid injuries so that you can get as far as you can in the playoffs.
I think you've got to secure the win, right? Like, and I totally get your injury comment. I would say though, last season, I mean, what were the concerns? It was that Donovan missed
And
the last.
that was kind of a freak injury.
Yeah.
That wasn't a rest issue.
Yeah, and he missed like the last month and a half to 2 months of the regular season. He missed a lot of time. And then you had Mike, who had been dealing with hamstring injuries the whole year. And thankfully, I mean, knock on wood, Mike has been okay this year. He's played in back-to-backs. Like he played a lot in January when there were the COVID issues and didn't have any injury issues. We have had Bojan and Rudy, who both had calf strains this year, if I remember. Just to bring back the calf strains again. That could be concerning. I believe Whiteside was hurt for a tiny bit, but the Jazz are healthy right now. Like, obviously something could change in the playoffs, but there isn't a concern about the Jazz health. And that is something that is part of the reason why I am so optimistic, is we know how important health is to Utah, and they're healthy. And we also know how important, like, having things the dominoes fall the right way. And we know that, well, it sucks. And, it's not like we're hoping for people to get hurt. That as Jazz fans, Luka being out is a big deal. And that thankfully the Jazz are healthy and can hopefully take advantage of that to get to the second round, because we also know that Luka likes to push things to 7 games. Like, and
he's really good at it.
He's really good at it. And this is the first time that Game 7 is actually going to be in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, I think that Jazz in 6, but if it goes to Dallas, I'm definitely probably picking Mavs in 7. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think you got to pick up wins where you can pick up wins.
And to that point, that's exactly where, like, that's what Vegas says is the most likely option. Jazz in 6 is kind of
Jazz in 6?
how they've set the odds.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you pick up one win where ESPN is making it like it's 52-48, I think, for game 1, and then like 54-46 for game 2. You pick up one of those, and then I think it's 75-25 for each game in Utah. And that might change when Luka comes back. But all you need to do is win one game in Dallas and then win here in Utah. And like you said, if you steal 2 in Dallas, then obviously we know that you can lose 2-0 series leads. But
it will be rough. That's a rough spot to climb back from.
It is. It's rough
for the Mavs.
And,
yeah.
Again, like, injuries definitely helped the Clippers, but they did lose Kawhi. So I can't just say that they were fully healthy, without it. But it's going to be exciting. This video is not going to be out for a long time before the game starts. So please let us know what you guys think, what you think is going to happen. We'd love to chat about game 1 as well. Is there anything else you want to say, Dale, before we wrap it up?
I'm just excited for playoff basketball.
It's going to be awesome. I'm excited to go. I haven't even looked at what's happening with the play-ins right now, but I'm just still shocked about Paul George missing tonight. But that's another discussion entirely.
Yeah,
so.
I'm rooting for the Pelicans. So,
well, thank you guys so much again for watching. Dale and I are hoping to get an episode out next weekend. We do actually have some life events coming up, though, and so we know this is definitely not a great time to not be able to push out content. But if you want to chat about whatever game, come to the comments of this video, and hopefully we can get stuff out the next few weeks. But who knows? If we don't get videos out and the Jazz win, maybe we'll keep not putting videos out and press our luck there. It could be us who's causing all the issues. So thanks again, and go Jazz.